400 people over a cliff? Come on now. Hey everyone, it's TJ from Every Story Begins With Us. I enjoy telling the stories of those little known people and their great big accomplishments from all over the world. I hope you enjoy these stories just like I do. And I may butcher a few names along the way. So here we go. Today, we are traveling to a small chain of islands in the middle of the ocean. We call this chain of islands Hawaii. And these islands are visited by millions of people every year because of their beautiful beaches. But they are more than just beaches. There are volcanoes, magnificent waterfalls, and lush, rich land. And let's not forget the people and their rich culture. So today, we're going to recognize that rich culture and its history. We are going back in time before the islands were unified, and we are going to learn about the great king and great warrior, Kamehameha I. King Kamehameha, also known as Kamehameha the Great, was born somewhere around 1753 to 1761, possibly during the month of November. His birth name was Paea, and he was born to Kiku Iapoia II. She was the niece of Alepainui. I'm saying right now I'm going to be messing up these names, so just bear with me. But she was his niece, and he was the ruler of the Hawaii island. Now, during the Civil War, Alapainui killed the two legitimate heirs to the throne, and he then took the throne to become the ruler. Now, Kamehameha's father's name was Kiowa Kalanikupuapo. It has been rumored that Kamehameha was adopted by a monarch and his wife, but there is no proof that can substantiate that for sure. But what we do know about him is that when he was born, his father, whose name is Kiona, as I mentioned earlier, and his father's half-brother, they were both serving under the ruler Alapainui, due to the fact that both of their fathers had been defeated in the Civil War. Now, Kamehameha's father died when he was only 5 years old, so Kamehameha was raised in his uncle's court. Kamehameha's uncle's name is Kalaniopuu, and he took the time to train his young nephew. He was trained by his uncle in the skills in games, oral history, warfare, navigation, religious ceremonies, and other things that would be needed to become a district chief. In 1782, Kalaniopuu, his uncle, died. It is at this point that Kamehameha began to achieve notoriety. Now, his uncle's son was named Kewaloa, and he became the king after his father's death. And Kamehameha was given the religious position of guardian of the Hawaiian god of war, Kuka Ilimoku. And he was also given control of the Waipo Valley district. Now, the two cousins began to have a strained relationship after Kamehameha made a dedication to the gods instead of letting his cousin, the new king, do it. And this now leads me into the prophecy. I want to tell you about the prophecy of the new king that was predicted to come to Hawaii by the people before I move on with this story. Now, legend prophesied that a light in the sky with feathers like a bird would signal the birth of a great chief. And in 1758, Halley's Comet passed over Hawaii. And it is believed that this is the year Kamehameha was born. He was given the birth name Paea and was hidden in the Waipo Valley from the warring clans. Now, after the threat of death passed, he was brought out of hiding and he was renamed Kamehameha, which means the lonely one. And he was trained as a warrior and was very skilled and very strong. And this strength was proven the day he overturned the Naha stone, which weighs about 2.5 to 3.5 tons. The lifting of the stone by Kamehameha fulfilled the prophecy in the eyes of many of the chiefs. So this garnered him support from 5 of the major chiefs. Other chiefs, though, rejected the prophecy and supported his cousin as the true ruler, and this led to conflict. So eventually the 2 cousins went to battle, and his cousin Kewalao was defeated in the very key battle of Moku o Hai. Kamehameha and his chiefs have now taken over Kinohiki responsibilities and secret obligations for the districts of Kohala, Kona, and Hamakua on Hawaii Island. Now bear in mind, Hawaii Island is just one island with those different regions on that island. That's the main island, what we consider the main island today. Hawaii at this time was not unified, so each island was its own separate island, and on each island, each little region or area, north, south, east, west, were ruled by different chiefs. So the islands were not unified, and even within each island, there was not unification because there were these various different tribes run by different chiefs. So part of the prophecy was that this great king would come and unify all of the islands. So Kamehameha has now defeated his cousin and is now ruling the island of Hawaii. So he and his chiefs took on those different responsibilities and sacred obligations that I listed earlier. Now, I do want to mention that during his lifetime, Kamehameha took multiple wives, but his favorite was Ka'ahumanu. She held tremendous political power, so did her father, and she was also co-ruler with her husband. So Kamehameha and his council of chiefs, including his wife, decided it was time to unite the islands. Kamehameha had allies with British and American traders, and they sold him things like guns and ammunition. So he was supplied unlimited gunpowder from China, and he was also taught the formula to make gunpowder. All of the ingredients needed could be found in abundance on the islands, so he had no problems making his own ammunition. This weaponry gave him an advantage and contributed to his successes. In 1789, the Olowalu massacre occurred. Simon Metcalfe, who was a British sailor, captained the ship called the Eleanora. And he was angry with the natives because a small boat of his was taken by native townspeople. They carried it to their town and took the boat apart and used the pieces. In addition to that, he had a confrontation of his own provoking with one of the local chiefs. So he did not like the people very much, even though he traveled to the island to trade with them regularly. So in revenge for the ship, or what, not the ship, but it was a small little boat. And in revenge for that small boat being taken, he lined his ship up and had all of his cannons moved to one side of the ship. And then he started releasing his trading call, which is what the sailors would usually do, to call the natives and let them know that they are there for trade. So the natives would then come out to the beach, maybe sail out on their boats to the ships to do trade with the sailors that would come along. So once the natives were in range of his ship, he began firing his cannons, and in total, he killed 100 natives. This angered the Hawaiians, and in revenge, one of the Hawaiian chiefs, Kamehameha, who was the chief who had been attacked by Metcalfe in a prior incident, decided they needed to fight back and that they were going to attack the next foreign ship that came to Hawaii. Unfortunately for Metcalfe, he was also sailing with his son, Thomas Metcalfe, who was on their second ship titled the Fair American. And what they did was that Kamehameha and his followers, they used their canoes and they sailed out to the Fair American. And when they got there, they captured Thomas Metcalfe and killed him along with 4 of his other crew members. So basically, they killed Simon's son and all of his crew members except one, who was named Isaac Davis. He was the only remaining survivor of that attack. There had also been a man from the other ship that had been captured. His last name was Young. And Kamehameha took Davis and Young into protection, and he took control of the Fair American. Now, Simon Metcalfe sat out at the ocean near shore for a few days. The natives thought maybe he was plotting revenge, but he eventually sailed off, apparently unaware of what had happened to his son Thomas and his crew. The captured were eventually given wives and they settled in Hawaii, but not after they'd first made an attempt to escape. After that failed escape attempt, they just settled into lives in Hawaii and took wives. And they both actually assisted Kamehameha in multiple of his battles and confrontations that he had in the future. And one other story that I do want to point out is that before Kamehameha became the great king and the great warrior and entered into all of these battles to unify Hawaii, he, in 1779, 10 years prior to the massacre, had encountered the famous Captain James Cook. Captain Cook sailed into Kealakekua Bay, which was on the west side of the island. The only thing that Cook brought to the Hawaiian people was gonorrhea, syphilis, and other diseases to the island. On one of his last return, well, not one, it was his last return to the island, he was captured and he was killed along with the 4 men that traveled with him. So the famous Captain Cook was taken out at the Hawaiian Islands, and the only legacy he left were venereal diseases to the people. Moving forward to 1790, Kamehameha invaded Maui using cannons from the captured ship, the Fair American. And they defeated the army that was ruled by Kahekili without any problems. Now in 1791, Maui was taken back by Kahekili, who himself also managed to acquire cannons. But civil war broke out on Maui among the various chiefs. This gave Kamehameha the opportunity to go in during this strife and finally get control of Maui. So once the Civil War broke out in 1793, he won control of Maui. But Kamehameha may have won Maui, but at the same time he was battling to take Maui in 1790, one of the local rulers named Kiowa Kuriohulu took advantage of his absence and raided the west coast of Hawaii. I'm pretty sure I messed that name up pretty bad, so forgive me. Upon the return of Kamehameha, Kiowu and his followers fled to the Kilauea volcano, which then erupted while they were there, killing many of his warriors, mostly from the poisonous gas. In 1791, Kamehameha invited Kiowa to meet. Now, as Kiowa stepped on shore, one of Kamehameha's chiefs threw a spear at him, but he managed to dodge it. Then someone fired a musket and killed Kiowa. His bodyguards, they were all taken off guard. They were surprised by this attack and were not prepared to battle. And in the end, Kiowa's bodyguards were killed as well. Kiowa's remaining supporters were either killed or captured. This now made Kamehameha king of Hawaii Island. In 1795, Kamehameha began his conquest to conquer the remaining islands. And he quickly conquered Maui and then Molokai at the Battle of Kauwela. He then went to the island of Oahu, but one of the high-ranking commanders under his rule defected to the other side. His name was Kaiana. Kamehameha did not know one of his high-ranking commanders had betrayed him, and so he was surprised to find himself in a series of small battles as a result of this betrayal and them being able to be prepared ahead of time. Because what Kaiana did was he helped the other side trench out a lot of long trenches along the mountainside, and they were used to place the cannons in. So when Kamehameha and his troops approached, they were faced with heavy cannon fire. But his forces pushed his opponents back until they were cornered on Pali Lookout. Kamehameha and his troops took very heavy cannon fire as they moved onto Pali. But what he did was he ordered two of his best divisions of warriors to climb up Pali to attack the cannons from behind. They were very successful in this feat. They actually climbed that mountain and they took the gunners by surprise and obtained control of the cannons. Now the other troops fell into disarray after losing their guns and found themselves cornered, and a fierce battle ensued. Kamehameha and his warriors formed a wall enclosing the opposition. After closing them in, they forced over 400 men over the Pali's cliff, and this was a drop of about 1,000 feet. Kaiana, his betrayer, was also killed in this battle, and the chief was later captured and sacrificed to the war god. This was the summer of 1795, And after conquering Oahu, there was only one island left, the island of Kauai. So in the spring of 1796, he attempted to take Kauai, but he lost many of his canoes as they were sailing to the island due to strong winds and rough seas. So he returned to Hawaii, and there he remained for 6 years. During that time period, he ordered the building of a large fleet of double-hulled war canoes called Pelelu. He ordered 800 ships to be built, and he stocked a large amount of guns and ammunition and cannons as well. And between 1802 to 1803, he went to Maui for a short time period. And then he went on to Oahu in late 1803 to early 1804. There on Oahu, he and his forces fell very ill. Now, I did want to back up and point out that when they traveled to Maui and then Oahu, they traveled with their Pelelu warships, and he traveled with his warriors. So once they were on Oahu, he and his forces all fell very ill, and many died. They're not sure what the illness is, but they believe that it was possibly from either cholera or bubonic plague. Kamehameha contracted the illness, but he survived. This illness put off his second attempted invasion of Kauai. In 1810, he was able to negotiate peacefully to unify Kauai with the islands. So he had a peaceful negotiation with the local chief, and this is the point where he finally succeeded in unifying all of the islands. After Kamehameha successfully negotiated the unification of Kauai into the rest of the islands of Hawaii, some of his followers wanted to kill the chief of Kauai, but Kamehameha had promised his safety, and he did not want to do that. So they decided they were going to go behind his back and do it anyway. And Davis, one of the men who had been captured in the previous battle, had warned Kamehameha of what his people were trying to do. And in return for him warning Kamehameha of about what was to happen, he himself was killed. Because see, Kamehameha's followers were going to poison the chief, but instead they used the poison on Davis and killed him for giving Kamehameha the heads up. But essentially, the prophecy has now been fulfilled, and the islands are now unified as one. Kamehameha also unified the legal system, and he used products collected in taxes to promote trade with Europe and the US. And he also set up a system so that the islands would remain united and could not be separated. Kamehameha returned to Oahu in around 1812, and he spent his last years at Kamakahanui, which was a compound he had built in Kailua Kona. He died on either May 8th or May 14th, 1819, and his body was hidden by his trusted friends. This is their custom. It is called hunakale, which means to hide in secret. It is believed that the mana or power of a person is sacred and should be protected. So his final resting place remains unknown to this very day. Now, as a side note to the life of Kamehameha, I want to state that he had many wives, and it is estimated that he had about 26. He had 35 children, 17 sons and 18 daughters, but only the children from his highest ranking wife, Keopuolani, succeeded him to the throne. The great King Kamehameha accomplished the humongous task and fulfilled the prophecy of uniting all of the islands into one country known as Hawaii, a country that many people travel to today because of its beauty and its richness. It is also because of its beauty and richness that it was of interest to the Western world, who eventually took control of the island. It is now under the rule of the United States, and the native people have been pushed to the background and neglected as their resources and the beauty of their land are utilized by outsiders. And we can see the results of the treatment, as was illustrated with the fires in Lahaina recently. So I hope this story can add a little honor to the people who lost their lives and to the people of Lahaina. This is just to shed some light on some of the greatness of Hawaii and some of the great people that have come from there. So guys, that's it for today's video. And as always, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment on what you think about today's story. I'll see you soon.